bringing this motion before the House on behalf of all of the over 50% of Territorians and 55% of residents in my electorate who are renters. We are in a grip of a housing crisis, and it is renters who are bearing the brunt. The evidence is overwhelming. Territorians are facing an unprecedented rental affordability crisis that demands immediate and decisive action. Let me also be clear at the outset, the problems in our housing market and the rising cost of living are not caused by migrants. They are caused by billionaires and by the two major parties working for corporate vested interests instead of everyday people. And it is deeply concerning to see divisive rhetoric scapegoating migrants for problems created by corporate greed and decades of failed housing policy.
You mentioned there in your drivers, for the key drivers for inflation, tight jobs, petrol, services, industries, etc. You just mentioned there as well population. Can I ask you about the impact of immigration? Where do you stand on that? I know that last year in November you said you welcomed it. Immigration was a good thing for Australia. Do you still stand by that, given the sticky nature of the inflation figures now and the impact it is having on the economy?
So a couple of points. Immigration broadly over the long sweep of history I think has been positive for Australia. What we've observed though with the pandemic is that immigration has had really big swings. We had the borders closed, we had no immigration, and then the borders opened and then we had a massive increase in immigration. My understanding, and I think this goes into our forecasts, is that the government is looking to put immigration on a much more steady footing going forward rather than these big swings which we've seen. But we've been through, once in a 100-year shock through the pandemic. On the impact in inflation, it's not actually that straightforward because, yes, new migrants add to demand, and there's been that element of it. They've certainly added to pressure on the housing market, we know that. But on the other hand, they've added to labour supply. And one of the biggest complaints that I used to hear from businesses during the pandemic and during the border closures was they couldn't get people, they couldn't get staff. And even as we were coming out of those circumstances, you'll remember the labour market was so tight, businesses just could not get workers. So they've added to the supply side of the economy as well. So I think our judgment is that, on balance, it really hasn't added dramatically to inflation, with the exception that it's put big pressure on the housing market, and that's obviously working its way out in rents, and that's the one bit where it's. But otherwise, I think it's been pretty much of a muchness.